I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, mascara streaking down my cheeks. The sounds of laughter and chatter from my own baby shower filtered through the closed door, a cruel reminder that my special day had been hijacked. Again. My name is Samantha, and I should have known better than to let my sister anywhere near the planning of my baby shower. But my mother insisted, saying, "Addison has such wonderful taste, darling, and you know how she loves to help." Help? More like steal the spotlight, which is exactly what happened 30 minutes ago. The day had started perfectly. The garden was decorated with soft pink and white roses, crystal champagne flutes sparkled in the spring sunshine, and my closest friends and family gathered to celebrate my first child. Even my usually stoic father Malcolm seemed touched, his eyes glistening when he hugged me. "You're glowing, sweetheart," he whispered, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Actually, I do mind," I say quietly. "This is my baby shower, Addison. My day." Her perfect smile falters. "Don't be silly, Sam. I'm just trying to make it special." Special for whom? Before she can answer, I hear Liam calling from the garden. "Sam, your mother wants to start the games." I look at my sister, at her flawless makeup and designer dress, at the ring that cost more than my car, and something hardens in my chest. This ends now. "Coming," I call back. But as I brush past Addison, I make a silent vow to myself. No more playing nice. No more being the understanding little sister. It's time to show them all who I really am. 3 weeks after my ruined baby shower, I found myself sitting in a financial planning class at the local community center. Catherine had convinced me to join her, saying it would be therapeutic. I wasn't sure how spreadsheets could heal my wounded pride, but I was desperate enough to try anything. The key to independence, our instructor Sarah explained, is understanding where your money goes and how to make it work for you. I glanced around the room, surprised to see it filled with women of all ages. Some were taking furious notes, others nodding along knowingly. I felt like an imposter, the privileged daughter of a wealthy family who'd never had to worry about money. "Hey," Catherine whispered, nudging me. "Look what I found while organizing the firm's archives." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a document that made my heart skip, a detailed record of Addison's spending habits and loans from our father. "Where did you get this?" I whispered back. "Perks of being a legal assistant at your father's firm." She winked. "Did you know Addison's been borrowing money monthly? That fancy apartment, the designer clothes, even that engagement ring. It's all Daddy's money." The revelation hit me like a truck. While I'd been working as a marketing consultant, building my own life with Liam, Addison had been living off our father's wealth. No wonder she could afford to overshadow everyone. She wasn't paying for any of it. After class, Catherine and I grabbed coffee at the cafe next door. "I can't believe she's that dependent," I said, stirring my decaf latte. "She always acts so successful." "It's all smoke and mirrors," Catherine replied. "But here's what I don't get. Why does your dad enable it?" My phone buzzed. Speaking of the devil. "Samantha, darling." Addison's voice chirped through the speaker. "I need a teensy favor. Can you spot me $5,000 just until next month? The wedding planner needs a deposit." I nearly choked on my coffee. $5,000? I know, but Daddy's maxed out this month's allowance, and Orlando's trust fund payment doesn't come through until next quarter. Please? You're my sister. I caught Catherine's eye across the table. She raised an eyebrow. "I'll need to think about it," I replied carefully. "But I need it today. The venue won't hold the date without a deposit." "Then maybe you should consider a different venue," I suggested, surprising myself with my firmness. Silence on the other end. Then, "Wow, I can't believe you're being so selfish. After everything I've done for you?" "Like what, exactly?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "I planned your baby shower." "You mean the one where you announced your engagement?" Another silence. "I have to go," she said finally. "Orlando's calling, but we'll talk about this later." The line went dead. Catherine slow clapped. "Finally!" she exclaimed. "You stood up to her." But my mind was already racing ahead. I need your help, I said, pulling out my laptop. Show me everything you know about financial planning. Everything went smoothly until the gift opening ceremony. I had just unwrapped a beautiful handmade blanket from my best friend Catherine when Addison cleared her throat and clinked her glass. Everyone, I have an announcement, she trilled, her voice carrying across the garden. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. Orlando and I are engaged. For the next 2 hours, Catherine walked me through basics of investment, budgeting, and digital literacy. By the time we finished, I had enrolled in 3 online courses: Advanced Excel, Digital Marketing, and Personal Finance Management. What exactly are you planning? Catherine asked as we packed up. I'm not sure yet, I admitted, but I know I need to be smarter, stronger, more independent. No more letting Addison walk all over me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Liam. Hey, where are you? Your mom's been calling. Something about Addison needing emergency sister time? I rolled my eyes. I'm busy. Tell her I'm at a prenatal class. Sam. Liam's voice softened. I know the baby shower thing upset you, but she's still your sister. And I'm still your wife, I shot back. But that didn't stop you from celebrating while I cried in the bathroom. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is everyone always taking her side. I'm done with that. I hung up, hands shaking. Catherine gave me a concerned look. You okay? I nodded, placing my hand on my growing belly. For the first time in a long time, I think I will be. As we left the cafe, I spotted a familiar document poking out of the folder. A loan agreement between my father and Addison, with terms that made my eyebrows shoot up. This wasn't just pocket money. This was serious debt. Catherine, I said slowly, I think I just figured out how to teach my sister a lesson about independence. She grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. Want to know what else I found in those archives? I smiled back, feeling a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. It was time for Addison to learn what it means to stand on her own 2 feet, whether she wanted to or not. You want me to what? Catherine stared at me across her dining room table, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial documents. Help me create a presentation showing exactly how much money Addison owes, I repeated, highlighting another figure on the loan statement. Dad needs to see the full picture. And you really think he'll cut her off? Not immediately, but once he sees how she's bleeding him dry. I patted my 7-month baby bump. Let's just say I'm not the only one who needs to grow up. My phone buzzed for the 10th time that morning. Another missed call from Addison. I'd been dodging her for 2 weeks since refusing the loan, and it was clearly driving her crazy. Speaking of your sister, Catherine said, did you see her latest Instagram post? I pulled up the app. There was Addison, posed in front of a luxury car dealership, caption reading, testing out wedding getaway cars with my love. Thou blessed Tirum future Mrs. Stevenson. She's still pretending everything's fine, I muttered. But look at the date on this latest loan request. Catherine leaned over. That's from yesterday. $5,000 for a car deposit? Which she asked me for last week. She's desperate. My phone rang again. This time it was Orlando, Addison's fiancé. That was new. I answered, putting it on speaker. Samantha. Sorry to bother you, but I'm worried about Addison. Oh? I kept my voice neutral. She's been different lately, anxious. She mentioned you two had a disagreement about a loan. I caught Catherine's eye. She nodded encouragingly. I just think it's time Addison learned to manage her own finances, I said carefully. Don't you want your future wife to be financially responsible? A pause. Actually, that's partly why I'm calling. I found some concerning documents in her apartment. Bills, overdue notices. I had no idea she was in this situation. Really? I feigned surprise. I thought you two discussed everything. We discuss a lot of things, he said slowly. But money, she always said her family handled that. Perfect. Seeds of doubt planted. After hanging up, Catherine whistled low. That was masterful. But aren't you worried about pushing them apart? If their relationship can't survive financial honesty, maybe it shouldn't survive at all. My laptop pinged. An email from my father's accounting department. I'd requested copies of my trust fund documents. Claiming pregnancy brain made me forget the details. Instead, I'd gotten a gold mine. Complete records of both Addison's and my accounts. The collective gasps and squeals that followed made me want to throw up. Or maybe that was just the morning sickness that still hadn't quite gone away at 6 months pregnant. Look at this ring. Addison thrust her left hand forward, the enormous diamond catching the sunlight. We're thinking of a winter wedding in Aspen. Samantha, you'll have had the baby by then. You can be my maid of honor. Holy shit, Catherine breathed, looking over my shoulder. Is that how much she's borrowed in total? And look at the interest rates Dad's charging. Practically nothing. He's enabling her. A knock at Catherine's door made us both jump. Through the window, I saw Addison's red convertible parked outside. How did she find me? I hissed. Find my iPhone, Catherine groaned. Quick, hide the documents. I shoved everything into my laptop bag just as Catherine opened the door. Addison burst in, mascara smeared. Why are you avoiding me? She demanded. I've been calling for weeks. I've been busy, I said, gesturing to my belly. You know, preparing for my actual baby? Too busy to help your sister? The venue canceled. They gave away our date because I missed the deposit deadline. That's terrible, I said, not even trying to sound sincere. Maybe try somewhere more affordable? Addison's face crumpled. Orlando suggested the same thing. He's been asking all these questions about money lately. Did you say something to him? Me. I barely know him. But since you're here, I pulled out a single document from my bag. I did some research on financial planning. Did you know most couples fail because of money issues? She snatched the paper, a basic budget template I'd prepared. What's this supposed to be? A wake-up call. You can't keep living off Dad forever. I don't live off... She stopped, face paling. How do you know about that? Does it matter? The point is you need help. From you? She laughed bitterly. Little sister wants to teach me about money? Actually, yes. I stood up, meeting her eye to eye. I'm offering to help you become independent, really independent, but it has to be on my terms. Addison's lower lip trembled. For a moment, I saw past the perfect makeup and designer clothes to the scared little girl beneath. Orlando wants a prenup, she whispered. I don't know what to do. I shared a look with Catherine. This was it, my chance to either destroy my sister or save her. Sit down, I said, pulling out the budget template again. Let's talk about your future. Your real future, not the fantasy you've been living in. Addison hesitated, then sank into the chair across from me. As I opened my laptop, I felt a shift in the air. The balance of power had finally changed. Family dinners at my parents' house had always been tense, but tonight was different. I sat at the massive oak table, 8 months pregnant and armed with knowledge that could tear everything apart. More wine, Orlando? My mother offered, ever the perfect hostess. No, thank you, he replied, glancing at Addison. We're trying to cut back on expenses. Dad lowered his fork. Expenses? With the wedding coming up? Actually, Addison cleared her throat. We're thinking of postponing. Maybe something smaller. Smaller? Mom looked horrified. But we've already told everyone about Aspen. I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. 2 weeks of financial counseling with Addison had already started showing results. Speaking of money, Dad turned to me. How's that new investment portfolio I set up for the baby? Before I could answer, Liam jumped in. It's amazing, Malcolm. The returns are incredible. That's because Dad knows how to manage money. Addison said quickly. Unlike some people who think budgeting spreadsheets solve everything. I met her gaze across the table. Spreadsheets don't solve problems. They just make them visible. Orlando shifted uncomfortably. Actually, I've been looking at those spreadsheets Samantha made. They're quite enlightening. Enlightening? Dad's bushy eyebrows shot up. What spreadsheets? Just some basic budgeting tools, I said innocently. Addison asked for help with wedding planning. Mom brightened. Oh, that's wonderful, you girls working together. Together isn't exactly how I'd put it, Addison muttered. What does that mean? Liam asked. It means, Addison's voice rose, that my little sister suddenly thinks she's a financial guru trying to control my life. Control? I laughed. That's rich coming from you. How's that venue deposit coming along? Girls, Mom warned, but Dad held up his hand. What venue deposit? Addison paled. Nothing, Daddy. Just a small cash flow issue. Small? Orlando interjected. Addison, you told me it was $50,000. The room went silent. Dad's face turned red. 50,000? On top of what you already owe me? Malcolm. Mom touched his arm. Not at dinner. No, Lucia, this needs to be addressed. He turned to Orlando. Did you know about the loans? I looked desperately at my husband, Liam, silently pleading for support, but he just smiled and raised his glass along with everyone else. Congratulations, Addison. Orlando, welcome to the family. Catherine squeezed my hand under the table. She knew. She always knew. Isn't this wonderful? My mother Lucia gushed, floating between guests like a butterfly. Both my girls celebrating such beautiful milestones. Orlando's jaw tightened. I'm learning more every day. Samantha, Addison's voice cracked. You promised not to say anything. I haven't said anything, I replied calmly. Your spending habits speak for themselves. That's enough. Mom stood up. This is supposed to be a family dinner. Family? I pushed back my chair. You mean the family that always takes Addison's side? The family that lets her steal every important moment of my life? Sam. Liam reached for my hand, but I pulled away. No, let's talk about family. Let's talk about how Dad's been enabling Addison's spending for years while pretending it's business loans. Let's talk about how she's never had to work for anything because everyone's too afraid she'll fall apart. How dare you? Addison shot up. You're just jealous because... Because what? I cut her off. Because I actually earned my way? Because I don't need Daddy's money to impress people? Orlando stood up slowly. I think I should go. Orlando, please. Addison grabbed his arm. I can explain everything. Can you explain this? He pulled out his phone, showing what looked like a bank statement. Your father's not the only one you've been borrowing from, is he? The color drained from Addison's face. How did you... Your sister's spreadsheets made me curious. I did some digging of my own. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Everyone sit down. Now. We all sank back into our chairs. Even Mom, usually quick with a distraction, stayed silent. Addison? Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. Exactly how much money are we talking about? She burst into tears. I don't know, I lost track. Lost track? Orlando's voice rose. We're talking hundreds of thousands. Malcolm, Mom whispered. Surely there's been a mistake. No mistake, I said, pulling out my tablet. It's all right here. Every loan, every credit card, every emergency withdrawal. I've been tracking it for weeks. You had no right, Addison screamed. Actually, Dad said, reaching for my tablet, she had every right. This affects all of us. The family reputation, the business. The business? Orlando's head snapped up. What does this have to do with the business? Another heavy silence fell. I caught Catherine's warnings in my head about pushing too far, too fast. But it was too late now. Maybe, I said, standing again. We should continue this discussion when everyone's had time to process. My baby doesn't need this stress. As I waddled toward the door, Liam following close behind, I heard Orlando ask one final question that made me smile. Addison, what exactly did you mean when you said the family business was your backup plan? The morning after the disastrous family dinner, I woke up to 37 missed calls and one very angry sister pounding on my front door. Open up, Samantha. I know you're in there. Liam stirred beside me. Should I? No, I said, hauling my pregnant body out of bed. I'll handle this. I opened the door to find Addison looking like she'd slept in her clothes. Her perfect hair was a mess, and her mascara had created dark circles under her eyes. Orlando left me, she spat. Are you happy now? Come in before the neighbors call the police. She stormed into my living room, whirling to face me. Dad froze all my accounts. My credit cards are canceled. Even my emergency fund is gone. Sounds like consequences finally caught up with you. This is all your fault. You and your stupid spreadsheets. My spreadsheets didn't create your debt, Addison. You did that all by yourself. She collapsed onto my couch, mascara-stained tears rolling down her cheeks. What am I supposed to do now? I can't even pay my rent. Get a job, I suggested, lowering myself carefully into an armchair. Like normal people do? A job? She looked at me like I'd suggested she live in a dumpster. I have a career. Being Dad's social media consultant isn't a real job. We both know that's just his way of keeping you on the payroll. My phone buzzed. A text from Orlando. Can we meet? Need to talk about what you found. Who's that? Addison demanded. None of your business. Just like my financial records weren't your business when you tried to hack into them last month. She had the grace to look embarrassed. How did you know about that? Because I'm not an idiot. I saw the login attempts from your IP address. I just wanted to know how you were tracking everything. How you knew about the loans. I excused myself and fled to the bathroom, which brings me to now, trying not to completely break down while my own baby shower continues without me. A soft knock on the door. Sam? It's Catherine. Can I come in? I unlock the door and Catherine slips inside, immediately pulling me into a hug. Your sister is such a bitch, she whispers, making me laugh despite myself. Did you see Liam's face? I ask, dabbing at my eyes with tissue. He didn't even care. Maybe if you'd asked nicely instead of trying to steal information, I would have helped you. Helped me? She laughed bitterly. You've destroyed my life. Orlando won't return my calls. Dad thinks I'm a criminal and Mom can barely look at me. And whose fault is that? I stood up, anger finally breaking through. You've been living a lie, Addison. Pretending to be successful while drowning in debt. Using Dad's money to overshadow everyone else's achievements. Even my baby shower wasn't sacred enough for you. That's what this is about? You're still mad about the engagement announcement? It's about everything. Every birthday, every achievement, every milestone, you had to make it about you. And you did it all with borrowed money. A key turned in the lock. Liam coming back from his morning run. He froze in the doorway, assessing the scene. Should I come back later? No, I said firmly. This is your house, too. Addison was just leaving. Leaving to go where? She cried. I have nothing left. You have choices, I replied. Get a real job. Sell your designer clothes. Move to a cheaper apartment. Or keep playing victim while everyone else moves on with their lives. My phone buzzed again. Orlando confirming a meeting time at a local cafe. Why is Orlando texting you? Addison grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it away. Because unlike you, I actually understand business ethics. Business ethics? Her eyes widened. What did you tell him about the company? Nothing he couldn't find out himself once he started looking. Did you really think he wouldn't discover the truth about your investment portfolio? Liam stepped between us. Maybe we should all take a breath. Stay out of this, Addison snapped. This is between me and my sister. No, I said quietly. This is between you and reality. And reality's winning. She stood up, smoothing her wrinkled dress. You think you're so clever, don't you? Little Miss Perfect with her spreadsheets and her happy marriage and her baby on the way. But you forget, I know things about you too. The difference is I have nothing to hide. Her lips curved into a mean smile. We'll see about that. You're not the only one who can play detective. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, Liam turned to me. What did she mean by that? I rubbed my belly. feeling the baby kick. Nothing. She's desperate and lashing out. But as I watched her car speed away through the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Addison had always been dangerous when cornered, and I'd just backed her into the tightest corner of her life. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Catherine. Just heard from the office. Your sister's been asking about your old case files. Watch your back. She did what? I nearly spilled my herbal tea across the cafe table where Orlando and I were meeting. Tried to sell her engagement ring, Orlando said, running a hand through his hair. The jeweler called me because something seemed off. Turns out she'd already taken out a loan against it months ago. Before or after the baby shower announcement? Before. He looked tired, older somehow. The whole engagement was built on lies. Catherine, who'd insisted on joining us, leaned forward. That's not all. She came to the firm yesterday, demanding access to old files. What files? Orlando asked. Anything related to Samantha or the family business, Catherine replied. When we refused, she threatened to go to the press about corporate irregularities. My hand instinctively went to my belly. At 8.5 months, stress was the last thing I needed. She's bluffing, I said, but my voice wavered. Is she? Orlando pulled out his phone. Look at her latest Instagram post. The photo showed Addison, perfectly styled despite everything, standing in front of Dad's office building. The caption read, "Time to expose some family secrets. Truth will prevail. Justice. No more lies." She's lost it, Catherine whispered. My phone rang, Mom's name flashing on the screen. Hello? Samantha, please come to the house. Your sister. She's making demands. Men can be oblivious, Catherine says, helping me fix my makeup. But this isn't about Liam right now. This is about Addison stealing your thunder. Again. Like my college graduation, I say bitterly, when she announced her promotion during my valedictorian speech. And your wedding, Catherine adds, when she brought that Spanish prince as her +1 and spent the whole reception doing the flamenco. I could hear shouting in the background. Addison's voice, Dad's deeper tones. What kind of demands? She wants control of her trust fund. Says if we don't give it to her, she'll go public with something about your old marketing clients. My blood ran cold. She wouldn't dare. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Orlando stood up. I'm coming with you. Me too, Catherine added. The drive to my parents' house was tense. When we arrived, we found Addison in the living room, facing off against Dad while Mom hovered nervously nearby. Well, Addison sneered when she saw us. The gang's all here. What are you doing? I asked. Getting what's mine. Did you really think you could destroy my life without consequences? You destroyed your own life, Orlando said quietly. We just uncovered the truth. Truth? She laughed. Like the truth about how my perfect sister helped certain clients hide their assets during divorces? The room went silent. Dad turned to me, face pale. What is she talking about? Nothing, I said quickly. It was all legal. Legal but ethical? Addison pressed. I wonder what the ethics board would think about those creative accounting methods you suggested. That was 5 years ago, I protested, and I reported everything to compliance. After the fact, she shot back. I have copies of the original documents. Amazing what you can find when you start digging. Orlando stepped forward. Are you really going to destroy your family's reputation out of spite? Spite? Addison's voice cracked. You all ruined everything. My wedding, my relationship, my life. No one ruined anything, Dad said firmly. You made choices. Bad ones. And now you're making worse ones, Catherine added. Addison pulled out a USB drive. $1 million. That's my price for these files. You're blackmailing us? Mom gasped. I'm negotiating. Addison's hand shook. 1 million and I disappear. Start fresh somewhere else. I walked over to her slowly, my pregnant belly making me waddle slightly. You want to start fresh? Here's my counteroffer. I'll help you find a job. A real one. I'll teach you actual financial management. I'll even help you rebuild your relationship with mom and dad. Why would you do that? Because despite everything, you're my sister. And this baby deserves to know their aunt. The real you, not this desperate person you've become. Tears welled in her eyes. It's too late. It's not, Orlando said. But you need help, Addison. Professional help. Dad cleared his throat. I know a good therapist, and I'll pay for it. But that's the last money you'll get from me until you prove you can be responsible. Addison looked around the room, at all the faces watching her. The USB drive trembled in her hand. I don't know how to be different, she whispered. Then let us help you learn, I said, reaching for her hand. But no more threats, no more lies, no more manipulation. She stared at the USB drive for a long moment, then placed it in my palm. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. As she collapsed into tears, Mom rushed forward to hold her. Dad pulled out his phone, presumably to call the therapist. Orlando and Catherine exchanged relieved looks. I sat down heavily, exhausted but relieved. The baby kicked, as if sensing the tension breaking. Samantha? Addison looked up from Mom's embrace. Did you mean it? About helping me? Yes, I said, but this time we do it my way. Another knock. Samantha? It's Addison. Are you okay in there? Everyone's waiting to finish opening presents. I catch Catherine rolling her eyes in the mirror. Just a minute, I call out, trying to keep my voice steady. Morning sickness. Oh, poor thing. Addison coos through the door. I can't wait until it's my turn. Orlando and I want at least 3 children. We're thinking of starting right after the wedding. I grip the sink so hard my knuckles turn white. Catherine places a steadying hand on my shoulder. You should go back out there, she whispers. Show them you're stronger than this. I shake my head. I can't. I can't sit there and watch everyone fawn over her ring while my baby shower becomes her engagement party. Then don't. Catherine's eyes meet mine in the mirror. Go out there and take back your day. This is about you and your baby, not her. I take a deep breath, straighten my dress, and open the door. Addison stands there, twisting her new ring around her finger. Finally, she exclaims. I was getting worried. Oh, and I hope you don't mind, but I invited Orlando's parents to join us. They're on their way. Something snaps inside me. Years of being overshadowed, of playing second fiddle, of smiling through gritted teeth. It all comes rushing to the surface. Push. Just one more big push. The doctor's voice seemed to come from far away as I gripped Liam's hand with crushing force. Moments later, a sharp cry filled the delivery room. It's a girl. Through my exhausted haze, I saw Liam's eyes fill with tears as they placed our daughter on my chest. She's perfect, he whispered. Hours later, after we'd settled into the recovery room, there was a soft knock at the door. Addison poked her head in, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Is it okay if I come in? Of course, I said, surprised she'd asked permission at all. 2 months of therapy had already created subtle changes in my sister. She approached the bed carefully, carrying a small gift bag. I got her something. Nothing expensive, she added quickly. I made it myself. Inside was a hand-knitted baby blanket, slightly uneven but clearly made with care. You learned to knit? My therapist suggested finding hobbies that don't involve spending money. She smiled sheepishly. Turns out I'm not terrible at it. It's beautiful, I said sincerely. Want to hold your niece? As I placed the baby in her arms, Addison's face softened. She looks just like you. Poor kid, I joked, and we both laughed. A genuine moment of sisterly connection that would have seemed impossible months ago. I got the job, she said suddenly. The entry-level position at the marketing firm you recommended. That's wonderful. The salary's tiny compared to what I'm used to, but... She shrugged. It's honest work. How's the apartment hunting going? Found a studio within my new budget. It's small, but it's yours, I finished. Really yours. The baby stirred, and Addison handed her back just as Orlando appeared in the doorway. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Traffic was terrible." He gave Addison a polite nod, their first interaction since the breakup. "I should go," Addison said quickly. "My financial literacy class starts in an hour." As she gathered her things, Orlando cleared his throat. "I heard about the job. Congratulations." "Thanks," she replied softly. "And I'm sorry. For everything." He nodded, accepting the apology without elaboration. After Addison left, Orlando turned to us. "I actually came to discuss something important. It's about the family business." Liam sat up straighter. "What about it?" "I've been doing some consulting work for your father," Orlando explained, "looking at ways to modernize operations, and I found something interesting about those client files Addison threatened to expose." My heart skipped. "Orlando, no, this is good news. Those creative accounting methods you developed? They were actually brilliant. Completely legal, just unconventional. With some refinement, they could revolutionize how the firm handles client asset management." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your father wants to offer you a position, head of innovation and strategic development. You'd be working directly with the board to implement your ideas across the company." I looked down at my daughter, sleeping peacefully. "I don't know." "It's a flexible position," Orlando continued. "Work from home options, full maternity leave. Your father's finally realized he needs to modernize more than just the business practices." Liam squeezed my hand. "It's your decision, but I think you'd be amazing." "What about Addison?" I asked. "Won't she feel—" "This isn't about Addison," Orlando said firmly. "It's about recognizing talent and merit. Something your father should have done years ago." A knock interrupted us. Dad himself entered, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I heard my granddaughter arrived," he said softly, then noticed Orlando. You've told her?" I nodded. "I'm considering it." "Take your time," Dad said, surprising me. "But know that this offer comes with no strings attached. No family drama, no playing favorites, just recognition of your abilities." "And Addison?" "Is on her own path now," he replied. "One she needs to walk without our interference, just like you need to walk yours." He approached the bed, gazing down at his granddaughter. "What's her name?" "Emma," I said. "It means whole or universal. Because she brought our family full circle." Dad's eyes glistened. "Perfect." He cleared his throat. "Now, about that job offer." "I'll do it," I said suddenly, surprising myself. "But on one condition." "Name it." "I want to start a mentorship program for young professionals, teaching them real financial independence, business ethics, personal responsibility. Everything I had to learn the hard way." Dad smiled. "Like mother, like daughter. She's not even a day old and you're already thinking about teaching the next generation." As if on cue, Emma opened her eyes, looking up at all of us with that unfocused newborn gaze. "Welcome to the family, little one," Dad whispered. The new, improved version. Emma's first birthday party was everything my baby shower should have been. Intimate, joyful, and drama-free. I watched my daughter smash her cake with gleeful abandon while our closest family and friends laughed and took photos. "She definitely got your determination," Catherine remarked, watching Emma methodically destroy the butterfly-shaped cake. "And hopefully some of her aunt's creativity," Addison added, adjusting the handmade birthday banner she'd crafted. No designer decorations this time. Everything was personal, meaningful, and made with love. My phone buzzed with a work notification, but I ignored it. The innovation department could wait. Today was about family. "Ignoring work calls?" Liam teased. "Who are you and what have you done with my wife?" "I learned from the best," I said, nodding toward Dad, who'd left his phone in the car for the entire party. Mom appeared with a stack of gifts. "Present time." "Speaking of presents," Addison said nervously, "I have something to show you all." She pulled out a folder, not a designer handbag or expensive trinket in sight. What's this? Dad asked. My first client portfolio. She beamed. I landed them completely on my own. No family connections, no borrowed money, just hard work and actual skill. Orlando, who'd remained friends with the family despite everything, raised his glass. Congratulations, that's genuinely impressive. It is, I agreed, meaning it. The sister who once needed validation through expensive shows of grandeur now glowed with authentic pride. And, she continued, I made my first student loan payment yesterday. Only 29 more to go. Mom wiped away tears. Both my girls, successful in their own right. Different kinds of success, I added, watching Emma grab another handful of cake. All equally valuable. Which reminds me, Dad cleared his throat. The board approved your mentorship program proposal yesterday. Full funding, starting next quarter. I hugged him, getting cake frosting on his usually immaculate suit. He didn't even flinch. Remember when we could barely be in the same room? Addison mused, helping Emma unwrap a present. Now look at us. Actual functioning adults. Speak for yourself. I laughed. I still have spit up in my hair most days. But you're rocking it. Catherine interjected. The program you designed for new employees is changing lives. 3 of my friends have already signed up for the next session. It's amazing what happens when you let people grow at their own pace, I said, watching Addison show Emma how to play with her new toy. Without competition or comparison. Liam wrapped his arm around me. You did that. You turned revenge into redemption. We all did it, I corrected. Even you, Mr. Don't Make a Scene, finally learned to stand up for what's right. I learned from my wife. He grinned. And I'll never doubt your instincts again. Emma toddled over to Addison, arms raised. Without hesitation, my sister scooped her up, not caring that the cake-covered baby was ruining her work clothes. Remember when I thought designer labels were a personality trait? She chuckled. Remember when I thought proving you wrong was more important than helping you grow? I countered. Orlando raised an eyebrow. Remember when you two nearly destroyed each other over a baby shower? Never again, Addison said firmly, bouncing Emma on her hip. I'm done living in shadows, yours or anyone else's. My new apartment might be tiny, but every inch of it is earned. And the view? Dad asked. Perfect for watching sunsets while I knit baby clothes for my favorite niece. Mom started gathering plates, ever the hostess. Should we do the birthday song? Wait, I said. First, I want to thank everyone. Not just for today, but for everything. For letting us make mistakes, learn from them, and grow beyond them. For believing in second chances and real change. And third chances, Addison added with a wry smile. And fourth? The point is, I continued, taking Emma from her, we're stronger now because we broke apart and rebuilt. All of us. Emma chose that moment to plant a sticky kiss on my cheek, drawing laughter from everyone. To new beginnings, Orlando raised his glass again. To earned success, Addison added. To family, Dad said softly. To truth, Mom joined in. To growth, Catherine smiled. To love, Liam squeezed my hand. I looked around at my reformed family. Imperfect, healing, real. Emma squirmed in my arms, reaching for the remnants of her cake. To having your cake and eating it too, I concluded, letting my daughter dive back into the dessert. But only after you've earned it. As everyone laughed and the birthday song finally began, I caught Addison's eye across the room. She mouthed a silent, thank you, and I nodded, knowing we'd both finally found our place. Not in competition, but in harmony.
Today was meant to be the joyful beginning of our honeymoon, but instead it turned into a bizarre ordeal. Just as we finished packing our bags and were ready to head out, my husband unexpectedly ripped my passport to shreds. His self-satisfied smirk was infuriating. Truth be told, I had never intended to embark on this honeymoon with him. My plan was always to travel with my mom, given the tension that had been brewing even before our wedding. The strife between my husband and my mother-in-law had always been palpable, but I never grasped the depth of their problematic relationship until today. I have never known anyone else to have their mother-in-law hijack their honeymoon, and the whole scenario left me shocked and seething with anger. Most of all, I felt deeply uncomfortable. As he continued to destroy my passport with scissors, my mother-in-law watched on, grinning triumphantly. It became clear to me that I needed to escape this toxic environment as quickly as possible. Fortunately, this outrageous act provided me with the perfect evidence I needed to expose their true characters. My name is Emma, and I am 31 years old. I've been working for 6 years, and it was just recently that I received the marriage proposal of my dreams from my boyfriend of 3 years. We are currently planning our wedding and honeymoon. We met at work where he was a senior and I was just starting out. He always lent a hand when I faced challenges with new tasks. My past relationship with a college boyfriend fizzled out due to my reserved nature, and after several years of not dating seriously, I never expected to be among the first of my colleagues to get married. My husband always struck me as dependable and trustworthy. When he asked me out for the first time, I was elated. I still hold dear the dolphin figurine we bought on our first date at the aquarium. His intentions were clear from the start. He was dating with marriage in mind, and that made me incredibly happy. After many memorable dates, he proposed at the very same aquarium where it all began. That night, I was so filled with joy that I couldn't sleep. However, a visit to his parents' home shortly after our engagement made me start to question our future together. My father-in-law was welcoming, but my mother-in-law seemed less than pleased with me. Her dismissive comment about how he could have married someone more outstanding than this plain girl filled me with doubt and anxiety about our life together. Initially, I told myself that the nerves before the wedding were normal, so I brushed aside my concerns and pushed forward with the wedding plans. During one conversation about our future life together, both my husband and his mother assumed that I would quit my job after getting married. Although I once entertained the idea of leaving work to focus on family life, I realized that my job was a source of stability and confidence for me, especially amidst my growing anxieties about marriage. Despite the constant pressure from my mother-in-law to quit, I resolved to keep my position at the same company where my husband worked. As we planned the wedding, we faced a disagreement about when to officially register our marriage. My husband wanted to do it sooner rather than later. Ultimately, we respected his preference and registered our marriage, which, despite feeling routine, filled me with joy once I realized we were officially married. We initially planned for a small and intimate wedding. However, once my husband mentioned this to his mother, she intervened immediately. "Mason's wedding is too important for a small gathering," she declared over the phone. "The wedding must be grand, and I will ensure it's appropriate for Mason. Keep your guest list to just your parents and close friends. I suppose your friends are as uninteresting as you, and they'd only dampen the mood." I was overwhelmed by her forceful opinions on everything from the venue to the guest list, and it was frustrating to see her assert so much control. But I convinced myself that perhaps this was just the nature of weddings, and I reluctantly agreed to limit my guest list to just my parents and a few friends, as she wanted. However, her meddling didn't stop there. She had strong opinions on the program, entertainment, decorations, and catering. Following her demands would stretch our budget significantly. Initially, Mason's family had agreed to cover half of the wedding costs, but suddenly that arrangement changed, leaving me to shoulder the extra financial burdens for the grand wedding she envisioned. In an attempt to manage costs discreetly, I made some economical choices, but she criticized these decisions harshly, claiming they looked cheap and accused me of not following her instructions. After all the compromises and challenges, I hoped that the wedding would mark the end of her overbearing involvement. But as I soon learned, distancing myself from her influence was not going to be as easy as I had hoped. After our wedding, my husband made a decision that left me completely astounded. Despite my repeated frustrations with his mother's excessive involvement in our wedding plans and my clear desire to maintain some distance from her, my husband decided that we should live with her. Without my knowledge, he canceled the lease on our new apartment that we had already signed. All my belongings, which were meant for our new home, were instead sent to his family's house. I was left speechless, unable to comprehend how these major decisions had been made without my input. During the wedding planning, I had managed everything meticulously, even warning Mason that complying with all his mother's demands would stretch our budget too thin. He brushed off my concerns. The anxiety that had built up before our wedding only grew stronger after the ceremony. We had planned an overseas honeymoon to a destination I had always dreamed of visiting. The thought of celebrating our marriage there felt almost magical. However, my excitement was severely dampened by my growing discomfort with Mason's odd behavior and the looming reality of living with my mother-in-law upon our return. Despite my efforts, Mason did not cooperate much with the honeymoon planning. Oddly enough, he took it upon himself to book our flights and hotel. I was under the impression that he had chosen a romantic setting for our honeymoon, and despite covering all the costs myself, I was grateful he seemed to be contributing in some way. However, the night before we were supposed to leave for our honeymoon, Mason casually dropped a bombshell that shattered everything. As I was double-checking our luggage, he nonchalantly mentioned, "Emma, I'm going to go with my mom." I was in shock, unable to process his words. "What are you talking about? It's our honeymoon, not just any trip. Why would your mother be joining us? We've only paid for 2 flight tickets and the hotel." As I struggled to understand his logic, Mason surprised me yet again. "I never mentioned going on this trip with you, did I? Don't be ridiculous. I'm going with my mom. It's a gratitude trip for all she's done for me. You stay here and get the house ready by cleaning every nook and cranny." In a dramatic display, Mason then tore up my passport, which I had entrusted to him. Rendered speechless, I could only watch in horror as he destroyed it. Just then, his fully made-up mother barged into our room without knocking, eager to leave. "Mason, are you ready?" she asked. His face lit up with excitement. "Yeah, we're good to go. Finally, we can take this trip without any interruptions." They both shared a gleeful laugh, leaving me utterly disgusted. At that moment, I realized I was about to embark on a life with someone who was turning out to be a complete nightmare. While I had been figuring out how to coexist with my mother-in-law, this was beyond anything I could have imagined. As they laughed and left together, any words I could muster felt futile, dismissed as mere sour grapes by them. I had been relieved that Mason seemed to be helping with the honeymoon, but it turned out he had been planning to travel with his mother all along, booking everything in her name and leaving me to bear all the costs. The betrayal by my husband was a profound and painful blow, but my fury overshadowed the sadness. The quaint, intimate wedding I had always dreamt of, and the honeymoon that was meant to be the highlight of my life with the one I loved, were both tainted by the actions of my mother-in-law and my husband. Overwhelmed by the turn of events, I was initially in denial, but I quickly resolved that I needed to take decisive action. I decided to file for divorce. Interestingly, I had inadvertently prepared a powerful tool for my divorce proceedings. From the onset of our wedding preparations, I started recording audio clips, hoping to capture the joyous moments of these significant milestones. What began as an innocent desire to preserve happy memories of our wedding day soon turned into a chronicle of my mother-in-law's intrusive and undermining behavior. Though I had often considered stopping the recordings, assuming I'd never want to revisit them, it was ironic how valuable they became. Just days after moving in, as I was repacking my belongings, most of which I hadn't even unpacked, I pondered whether my husband and his mother had made it to the airport. This thought ignited an indescribable rage within me, so I focused on erasing any trace of my brief stay in that house. While cleaning the living room, I stumbled upon a shocking discovery: evidence of my husband embezzling money from his company. In his role overseeing company sales, he was underreporting earnings and pocketing the difference, and it appeared his mother was complicit. She had meticulously noted the actual sales, the amounts he skimmed off, and even cataloged the luxury items he bought for her with that money. Finding such incriminating evidence left out in the open was baffling. Realizing the gravity of these revelations, I briefly considered whether working at the same company might allow me to smooth things over, but I dismissed the thought. Why should I cover for someone who had so callously replaced me with his mother for our honeymoon? Armed with the evidence, I went straight to our company. Although they were supposed to be on their honeymoon, having both taken paid leave, my presence in the office instead sparked disbelief among my colleagues. When asked if I was supposed to be on my honeymoon, I no longer felt the need to conceal the truth. I revealed that my husband and his mother had gone without me, that my passport had been destroyed, and that I had paid for the entire trip myself. My colleagues, superiors, and boss were shocked and dismayed by my story. Expressing my gratitude for their concern, I then made my way to the executive wing of the company. Unbeknownst to my colleagues, and even my husband and mother-in-law, one of the top executives at the company is my uncle. I had intentionally kept our relationship a secret to avoid any implications that I had obtained my job through nepotism. I applied to the company without disclosing my connection and earned my position on my own merits. Although my uncle doesn't oversee human resources, I had reached out to him before my orientation to ask that our relationship remain confidential at work. Surprised but understanding, he had commended my integrity and assured me that our interactions would remain professional. Despite not having children of his own, my uncle had always shown me affection and support, traits I now found myself relying on more than ever in this troubling time. Ever since I was a little girl through to elementary school, my sisters and I enjoyed several trips with just my uncle. During these early years, I would often coax him into buying me little treats, which sometimes led to scoldings from my parents. My uncle always had a special affection for me, a bond that was clear even then. After I joined the company where he was an executive, we kept our professional lives distinctly separate. Beyond a few smiles exchanged during my orientation, we hadn't interacted at work. When the crisis with my husband and mother-in-law unfolded, I knew I needed support, so I went to my uncle's office. I explained the situation to his secretary and was quickly ushered in. My uncle's initial smile faded to a look of concern when he saw me. "Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon?" he asked. Overcome with emotion upon seeing his familiar, kind face, I burst into tears and recounted everything, how my honeymoon was hijacked, the living arrangements, and my husband's betrayal. I also disclosed my husband's embezzlement, handing my uncle the damning evidence. His reaction was one of visible fury, a side of him I had never seen before. He immediately promised to call a board meeting to address the issue. After discussing these heavy matters, he suggested we go grab some lunch, trying to lift my spirits before I headed back home. Despite the heartbreaking betrayal, it was comforting to know there were still people in my life who genuinely cared about my well-being. A week later, when my husband and his mother returned from the trip meant to be our honeymoon, my husband furiously called me for not picking them up from the airport and for not having the house cleaned as he had demanded. He ranted about my unexplained absence. By this point, I had already secured a top-notch divorce lawyer, recommended by my uncle and parents, and the legal process was underway. Without letting my husband finish, I retorted sharply, "You two sure are loud and annoying. I don't want to hear your voice anymore. Why would I pick up someone I'm divorcing? And why would I follow your silly orders?" His response was filled with disbelief and continued arrogance. "Do you think it's okay for you to say such things? I did you a favor by marrying you. If I divorce you, you'll never get remarried. My mom's furious too. If you come back now and prepare our meals, I might forgive you. We're tired of foreign food." His words were harsher than any before, but they only reaffirmed my decision. After revealing his true colors through the passport incident and the trip, I saw him for who he truly was. As he continued his rant, I cut him off. "I've consulted a lawyer about our divorce. Please discuss any further matters with them." "What are you talking about? I'm not getting a divorce," he blustered, clearly unprepared. I could hear his mother in the background, shouting to take the phone and hurling insults my way. Calmly, I added, "By the way, I've informed the company about your embezzlement. They'll be calling you in soon. Maybe you should get a lawyer too." Hanging up, I could almost feel his panic through the phone line. This painful chapter was closing, and despite everything, I was ready to move on and heal, supported by those who truly cared for me. It wasn't my problem anymore. My husband kept calling me, but I chose to block his number to avoid further stress. My uncle was already informed about our supposed honeymoon dates, so right after I had spoken to him about the situation, he moved quickly. Using the evidence I provided, the company promptly summoned my husband and began verifying the financial discrepancies I had reported. It turned out the amount he embezzled was substantial. During a meeting with the company's executives, my husband desperately tried to shift the blame onto me, fabricating a story that I was the real embezzler. My uncle, unable to restrain himself, vehemently defended me, asserting, "My niece would never do such a thing. We've confirmed that you and your mother are the culprits of the embezzlement. You're lucky we haven't called the police yet." Caught red-handed and now aware that I was connected to senior management, my husband seemed utterly defeated, as if he had lost everything at that moment. Later that day, I returned to the company to return the wedding gifts my colleagues had given us, given that our marriage had dissolved so quickly after the ceremony. However, everyone refused to take them back, insisting they were given as blessings. While I was enveloped by this support, my soon-to-be ex-husband approached me, bewildered. "Why didn't you tell me you were related to the top brass? I'm sorry. Can we start over? Can you ask your uncle to let me keep my job and make this embezzlement issue disappear?" I was appalled by his audacity. "Do you even hear what you're saying? Reflect on your actions and face the consequences. Divorce is the only option now," I said, pushing him away. With nowhere else to turn, he clung on desperately. Watching this, my colleagues called security, who promptly escorted him out. He was terminated from his position immediately, and the company began seeking damages for the embezzlement. During this tumultuous time, my mother-in-law tried to contact my family repeatedly. However, once she spoke with my level-headed father-in-law, the calls ceased. I had always wondered why my sensible father-in-law had permitted our honeymoon arrangement in the first place. He later came to me to apologize, admitting his mistake and explaining he had been misled into believing my mother-in-law was going on a domestic trip with friends. He had been looking forward to a peaceful week without her nagging about shopping and dining out, thinking it would be a slice of heaven. Returning home after the ordeal, my father-in-law supported my decision to move back to my parents' house and even helped me pack. Given the high emotions, we didn't discuss much else at the time. Knowing the kind, rational nature of my father-in-law reassured me that he would have intervened had he known the true situation. He was the only person in that household whom I felt I could truly trust. Although I was the victim, the humiliation of having my honeymoon hijacked was overwhelming. I contemplated resigning from my job. My parents suggested taking some time off work. However, my uncle, considering that work might provide a helpful distraction, discussed my situation with the CEO. They arranged for me to be transferred to a branch office, allowing me some space and a fresh start. The divorce process with my husband proceeded surprisingly smoothly, thanks to an excellent lawyer and the clear evidence of his wrongdoing. When planning our wedding and discussing the financial aspects, it became apparent that my husband had almost no savings. Similarly, my in-laws, who were an average working-class family, had little to spare due to my mother-in-law's excessive spending habits. My father-in-law ruefully noted that despite the short duration of our marriage, the alimony was substantial. Surprisingly, he even sold the family home to cover it. Their house wasn't located in the city center, but was part of a close-knit community where rumors spread quickly and stories were exaggerated, making life there increasingly uncomfortable. Initially, my mother-in-law had approved of our marriage, partly because both my husband and I worked for well-known companies, which was a status symbol for her. However, as rumors about her behavior and the subsequent scandal began to circulate, she likely found it unbearable to continue living there. Moreover, my father-in-law likely felt a sense of responsibility to manage the financial fallout from my husband's embezzlement. Despite my disdain for my husband and mother-in-law, I couldn't help but feel genuinely sorry for my father-in-law. After my husband was fired and required to pay damages, coupled with my decision not to return, he apparently suffered a mental breakdown and became unable to work. This left him moping around in a small apartment to which he had moved. Seeing her son in such a state, my mother-in-law became reclusive. In a candid conversation, my father-in-law expressed his exhaustion with my mother-in-law's antics and was even contemplating divorce. Unwilling to spend his later years in misery, he inquired if I could connect him with the lawyer who handled my divorce. I promptly contacted my uncle, who reached out to the lawyer on his behalf. While it might take some time, I am hopeful that my father-in-law can eventually lead the life he desires. Thanks to my uncle and the intervention of the company's CEO, I was transferred to a branch office where I was surrounded by supportive colleagues and superiors. I am eternally grateful for my uncle's unwavering support throughout this ordeal. My only regret through all this has been missing out on the country we had planned to visit for our honeymoon. Once things settle down, I hope to take that trip abroad, a journey meant for healing and reflection after a tumultuous chapter in my life. I recently decided to file for divorce. I've chosen to keep the house and the car. I understand this is a tough time, and though my words may sound sympathetic, they carry a sharper edge than intended. The smile that accompanied these words inflicted deeper pain than I could have imagined. How could he decide to leave at a time when I was battling illness? Didn't we vow to face life's challenges together? The shock of his cold demeanor and harsh words leaves me in tears. I am unable to forgive him. Despite my physical frailty, I am resolved to make him feel the pain he has inflicted upon me. This resolve marks the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one of retribution. My name is Natalie, and at 42 years old, I have devoted my life to being a loving housewife, caring tirelessly for my family. Each day with my husband Bruce used to be filled with joy, reminiscent of the sweet, vibrant candies we once enjoyed together, so delightful that time seemed to vanish. When we first met through a mutual friend, Bruce's outgoing nature and warm smile quickly put me at ease, making it easy to open up to him. Our early days were filled with such happiness that I eagerly looked forward to every moment we could spend together, cherishing each one. It's difficult to grasp now, but our love was once deep and true, filled with promises of a shared future. Living with him felt like a dream. Each day was radiant, and I believed our smiles would last forever. However, as time passed, Bruce began to change, likely strained by his demanding job. His salary wasn't substantial, as he hadn't pursued advanced education or qualifications, which limited his career opportunities. Although I suggested he consider a new job several times, he always hesitated, claiming he was content with his current situation. While I was working full-time and we weren't facing any financial issues, I still had concerns about what might happen if we decided to have a child or if I became ill and couldn't work. To ease these worries, I thought it might help if Bruce found a stable job as well. One day, a friend from my company's HR department mentioned there was an opening in administration. It didn't require special qualifications, just a basic skill set, and it seemed like a perfect chance for Bruce to improve his job situation, which I knew he found challenging. Excited, I suggested the position to him, thinking it could be a great opportunity. However, Bruce's response was unexpectedly cold and defensive. "Why are you making decisions about my job without asking me? I chose my current place myself. Are you saying there's something wrong with it?" His reaction caught me off guard. I had only suggested out of concern for his future and well-being, not to undermine his choices. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you with my proposal," I apologized, trying to explain my intentions. "I just thought the conditions at your current job seemed tough, and maybe this company would be a better fit for you." But he didn't see it that way. "Just because you're my wife doesn't mean you can interfere in my career decisions," he retorted, almost as if he were talking to a stranger, not his partner. As he walked away, his words, "As if you were a stranger," echoed in my mind, striking a deep chord. I am his wife, and we are supposed to be a family, yet his words and demeanor felt like they were directed at someone else. This incident was just one of many that began to create a growing rift between us. This strain extended to his interactions with my family as well. My mother, a genuinely kind soul, often visited our home while I was at work. She would clean and cook, leaving delightful meals in the refrigerator as her way of looking after us. I deeply appreciated her efforts and frequently invited her over for dinner. However, lately, Bruce had become visibly annoyed by her presence. On occasions when he'd come home and find her in the living room, his irritation was palpable, further widening the growing crack between us. Bruce's abrupt comment, "You're here again?" left both my mother and me stunned. It made me question the state of our relationship and our future together. How were we supposed to bridge the growing gap between us? With a gentle smile, my mother responded, "It's all right, Natalie. If my presence makes you uncomfortable, I apologize. I'll leave earlier today." Hearing her say that broke my heart, especially knowing how she always went out of her way to help us despite her busy schedule. "Bruce, please think about how Mom feels," I implored, tears beginning to well up in my eyes, altering the mood in the room. I remembered all the times she had brightened our home and couldn't fathom why Bruce would address her in such a manner. Bruce tried to explain his feelings, saying, "When I come home after working hard all day, all I want is to relax. It's exhausting to have someone else around all the time in my own house." I tried to see things from Bruce's perspective, but my appreciation for my mother's efforts made it difficult. It seemed to me that Bruce was just being stubborn, and I struggled to find a way to communicate my feelings in a manner he could understand. My mother, seeing the tension, reassured me, "Don't worry about it, Natalie. If everyone's happy, that's all that matters to me." Her comforting smile filled me with an overwhelming sense of guilt. That evening, as I savored the delicious meal she had prepared, my emotions were a mix of appreciation and remorse. I couldn't stop thinking about Bruce and how our relationship might be mended. Meanwhile, a new challenge emerged. One day at work, I suddenly felt dizzy and fainted. Thankfully, my colleagues acted swiftly, calling an ambulance and rushing me to the nearby hospital, where a series of medical tests began. Everything felt like a blur as my health took a sudden turn for the worse. I tried reaching out to Bruce, but he didn't respond. Then came the heavy diagnosis: cancer. Thankfully, it was caught early, and the doctors assured me that with the right treatment, I would recover. However, I was well aware of the grueling nature of cancer treatments and braced myself for a challenging journey ahead. I informed Bruce about my diagnosis and subsequent hospitalization, but his reaction was dishearteningly indifferent. His silence during this critical time made me feel incredibly isolated. Nonetheless, I resolved to focus on my treatment, believing that pushing forward was my only viable option. The treatment was even tougher than I had anticipated. My health rapidly declined, confining me to my hospital bed most of the time. Amidst this struggle, Bruce finally appeared in my hospital room one day. "How are you feeling?" he asked nonchalantly. "It's pretty rough," I replied, trying to inject some lightheartedness into the conversation. "It might have been a bit easier if you were by my side." Honestly, I was frustrated by his lack of presence. Why hadn't he come sooner? His support could have made a significant difference during these trying times. Instead of feeling relieved at our reunion, I felt even more isolated. Reflecting on our past only increased my irritation. Then, Bruce dropped a bombshell that left me genuinely stunned. "I filed for divorce. I'll take the house and the car. I know it's tough, but hang in there. I don't know how much time you have left, but I hope you keep fighting." "Wait, are you serious?" I exclaimed, unable to hide my shock. "Divorce?" A storm of questions raged within me. Didn't we promise to always stay together? I had always believed that true couples would face challenges together. Bruce's words confused me and left me feeling completely detached. At that moment, a quiet resolve formed within me. "I don't need him anymore," I whispered to myself. "I'll move forward on my own. I'll just forget about him. I decided there and then that he would one day regret underestimating my strength and resilience, but first I needed to end our relationship properly. I get it. I'm sorry for everything. Keep the house, keep the car, I said, relinquishing all ties with a sense of finality, ready to face the next chapter of my life on my terms. Whatever you want, if you need compensation money, I'll pay, I said with resignation. Bruce initially looked surprised, but quickly his expression turned into a smug smile. I didn't expect you to accept it so easily. I thought you'd throw a tantrum. Anyway, take care of yourself and don't bother inviting me to your funeral, he remarked coldly as he left the room. As he walked away, a smile spread across my face. He didn't realize that he had just fallen into my carefully laid trap. It was going to be interesting to see how his life would unfold from here. I reached out to a colleague from a company I knew well. Hello, long time no talk. I have a favor to ask. Can you help? Initially surprised, my colleague hesitated, but after I explained the situation, he agreed. All right, let's give it a try. Everything was set. I imagined Bruce's shocked and anxious face, and this vision brought a smirk to my face. This newfound sense of excitement even boosted my motivation to continue my medical treatments with renewed vigor. A few days passed, and one afternoon, after my treatment session, I noticed that my cell phone had received 102 missed calls from Bruce. The thrill of waiting for his call was oddly satisfying. Once I calmed down, I called him back, and his shaky voice greeted me. "Natalie, help me." "I never expected this," he pleaded. Hearing his distressed tone made me chuckle internally. This was exactly what I had planned. Trying to sound concerned, I asked, "Bruce, tell me what happened." He took a deep breath before replying, "My name's on the company's layoff list." I can't believe this is happening. As I listened to his panicked voice, I smirked, knowing that everything was unfolding just as I had orchestrated. The person I contacted was the head of sales at our company. I had asked him to reconsider the business dealings with Bruce's company. Initially puzzled, he reviewed their transaction history and decided it was best to switch to a different partner. That's why Bruce's company started calling me. Deciding to twist the knife a bit, I revealed something I had kept to myself. "You know, there are rumors in your company about you and the new girl. Everyone likes her," I said, dropping the hint with feigned nonchalance. This added layer was sure to unsettle him even more as my plan continued to unravel perfectly. "Because she's always so cheerful, there are whispers about an affair. Is that true?" I could hear disbelief in Bruce's voice. "Are you serious? You can't be serious. This has to be a joke." His surprise was understandable. After all, who would think an ordinary employee could wield such influence? "Well, actually," I continued, letting a pause hang to gauge his reaction, "I'm the CEO of this company." Silence fell on the other end of the line as Bruce tried to process the revelation. "It's no lie," I assured him. This was the reason we had been living so comfortably. "My annual income is around $5 million. Your regular salary wouldn't have been enough to support your lavish shopping habits." The truth was, Bruce's spending was exorbitant. The $2,500 monthly allowance he received from me functioned like a second salary, yet it was never enough for him. He'd often rush to me with a pleading tone, asking, "Can I have a little more?" At this rate, the money he received from me might end up surpassing his actual salary. While most people would scale back to a more sustainable lifestyle, since I earned $5 million a year, giving Bruce a $2,500 allowance each month wasn't a big deal to me. However, I always wondered what he spent that money on. "Bruce, yesterday was payday, wasn't it?" I asked him, reminding him of our routine. "I've always given you extra money on payday, but that might be difficult from now on. We're not a couple anymore, and it's only natural that you can't expect that monthly allowance." I then cautioned him about the mortgage on the house. "Oh, and be careful with the mortgage. It's $3,800 a month. I know it'll be tough, but you'll need to manage it well. If you're late with the payment, you might have to leave the house. While a $3,800 loan wasn't a burden for me, it was a significant amount for Bruce. From his reaction, it was clear he was both confused and in disbelief, repeatedly muttering, "Really? Can this be happening?" His sense of security was visibly shaken, reflecting his newfound vulnerability. "And that's crazy. What I said was the truth. This is the result of my efforts to maintain our relationship," I expressed, reflecting on how Bruce took advantage of my presence, pursuing only his desires. Perhaps it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. Why did it come to this? I've been laid off and now have to figure out how to get by. How am I going to pay the rent this month? The despair in his voice was palpable. He sounded lost and uncertain about his future. In his position, imagining a brighter future seemed daunting. I understood that Bruce's situation was overwhelming and confusing, a direct result of his past actions and disrespectful behavior towards me and my family. If he had shown genuine care and respect, things might not have deteriorated to this point. This was the consequence of his choices. Bruce remained silent, perhaps at a loss for words. I felt a mix of pity and amusement at his predicament. Was this the end of our conversation? Could I hang up now? But just then, he spoke again, his voice tinged with panic. "Wait, can we reconsider our relationship one more time? I know it sounds selfish, but I realize now how important you were to me." The idea of starting over with him made my heart race, not out of excitement, but due to the daunting prospect of revisiting all the pain he had caused. He continued, "I know I've been reckless lately, and I'm sorry I couldn't visit you in the hospital more often, but once you're better, let's go somewhere peaceful and have a relaxing time together. I want to see your smile again." His words were nostalgic, reminiscent of the promises he made when he proposed, a life filled with laughter and happiness. Back then, I was so swept up by his charm that I jumped into the relationship without fully considering the consequences. Now, reflecting on married life and all that had transpired, the thought of returning to how things were seemed overwhelmingly complex and fraught with potential pain. It proved challenging to navigate our relationship, especially with Bruce's reckless spending habits. Maybe if I had understood him better, things might have turned out differently. His voice grew weaker as he pleaded, "Natalie, I can't live without you. I want to be by your side and face life's challenges together. Can we start fresh, just one more time?" His words were saturated with sadness and a hint of desperation. Despite the emotion, trusting him again was difficult after everything that had happened. "Stop it already, we're done. I've chosen a new path and I can't go back," I responded firmly. There was a trace of sorrow in his voice, and I could sense he genuinely wanted to reconcile. "Please, let me say one last thing. I truly loved you, Natalie. If you ever change your mind, I'll be here." His words might have swayed me once, but I had already made a firm decision about my future and our relationship. I would no longer be influenced by his sweet talk. Enough. Words like that won't change my mind. Think about it. Don't you have another girlfriend? Shouldn't you focus on her? I was aware of Bruce's new relationship through information provided by his boss. His declarations of love now seemed hollow, mere conveniences to sway me back to his side. It was frustrating to realize that he only reached out when he needed something and turned away when times were tough. "We can't be together anymore. Spend quality time with her and forget about me. I will not be reaching out, but if you need to contact me, speak to my lawyer. Take care of yourself, Bruce." His pleas seemed sincere, but letting him go was necessary. It would likely make his life more difficult, but that was a consequence of his choices. I had my own life to move forward with, and I wanted him to stand on his own 3 feet. After our conversation, I hung up and adjusted my settings to block any further contact from him. According to my lawyer, Bruce repeatedly tried to reach out, but I remained firm in my decision to move on independently. My decision was resolute, and my lawyer respected it, keeping details about me confidential. Surprisingly, my lawyer then suggested pursuing damages, a possibility I hadn't initially considered, but now seemed like a viable way to seek compensation. I knew Bruce and his new partner were not financially well off. Rumors of his serious debts had circulated for a while. Upon further investigation into his affair partner, I discovered she had fled due to her financial predicaments. When I reached out to her family, they were furious and disclosed that she was now back home, working hard to make ends meet. It was clear that actions always have consequences, and they were now experiencing their own. Meanwhile, I had managed to overcome cancer and make a full recovery, a development that even surprised my doctors. On returning to the office, I found a letter on my desk from the supportive sales manager. His heartwarming words deeply touched me. As word got out that I was single again, some colleagues kindly offered to set me up. However, after everything that had happened in my past marriage, I decided to cherish my time and focus on myself for now. This period of reflection and self-care seemed essential after the tumultuous events I had endured. On the morning of the 25th, the president abruptly announced that I was terminated. He informed me that my daughter was joining the company, thus he required my immediate resignation. I stood there, stunned, unable to form a response. That particular day was crucial for handling our supplier payments. Some were processed via bank transfers for our long-standing partners, while others I personally attended to as a gesture of goodwill. He suggested I take the rest of the day off as a parting gift and swiftly ushered me out, the office door snapping shut behind me. My name is Donna. I had been with this family-owned paving company since high school, serving as a clerical worker for a decade. The company, which comprised about 32 staff members, had a warm and welcoming atmosphere under the leadership of the then president, who was also the company founder. He worked closely with the younger staff, and his wife, Brenda, was a regular presence, assisting with various tasks. Their daughter, Carol, was proficient in both field and office duties, and her husband, a trusted site manager, was well respected by the on-site team. Despite being the founders, they treated everyone as equals, never displaying a sense of superiority. This harmonious work environment changed dramatically when the founder, after a cancer diagnosis, stepped down. He appointed Carol's husband as the new president, a decision that received full support from all employees who wished the founder well with his health battles. However, the situation took an unexpected turn when the founder's estranged son, Anthony, resurfaced with his family. He had been out of touch for over 33 years after being disowned. The dynamic within the company shifted overnight, marked by my abrupt dismissal, which was both shocking and disheartening, ending my decade-long tenure under unfortunate circumstances. I was completely unaware of Anthony's history until he abruptly reappeared at our company. The long-standing employees shared that during his youth, Anthony was notorious for causing trouble, often resulting in run-ins with the law. Each time he found himself in a predicament, his parents, the chairman, and Brenda would step in to mend the situation with apologies. His misadventures escalated when he dropped out of high school and became involved in multi-level marketing schemes and fraudulent activities, ultimately leading his father to disown him. Despite years of estrangement, Anthony made a sudden return, pleading for forgiveness and expressing a newfound realization of his past mistakes. This reunion unfolded in the compact layout of our office, where the clerical area and the president's office were not separated by much space. He expressed a wish to mend fences and start anew in the company. However, given his checkered past, it was difficult for anyone to take his intentions at face value. In a surprising turn, the chairman asked us all to give Anthony another chance. He implored us, hoping for a fresh start. Although Carol and the other senior employees were aware of Anthony's troubled history, they found it challenging to fully embrace his return, but felt compelled to respect the chairman's earnest request. Consequently, Anthony and his family moved into an annex of the chairman's house, with Anthony joining the company and his wife, assuming household responsibilities. I only saw their daughter once when she visited the office. She appeared to be a college student. The chairman believed that Anthony had genuinely changed after enduring life's hardships, and Brenda was thrilled to have her son back, hoping to restore the family and company unity. However, this optimism was short-lived. Anthony soon caused new tensions by claiming that, as the eldest son, he deserved to be the next president, a statement that strained his relationships with Carol and the site manager. Despite appearing diligent in front of his father, Anthony contributed little to the actual work and often made disparaging remarks, undermining the value of physical labor and those who performed it. Anthony's dismissive attitude toward the staff, referring to them as mere worker ants who should work silently, quickly alienated him within our company. This alienation was so severe that several younger employees felt compelled to approach the chairman directly, expressing their inability to work under such demoralizing conditions. Despite this, the chairman and Brenda tried to mediate the situation, urging the staff to be patient and look at the bigger picture while they addressed the issue with Anthony. Amid these tensions, the chairman's health deteriorated significantly due to stress or other factors, leading to his hospitalization 5 months ago. In this moment of vulnerability, Anthony declared himself the president, disregarding advice from the employees who favored the original plan to appoint the site manager, Carol's husband, as the successor. The decision to elevate Anthony, swayed perhaps by parental affection or a decline in their acuity due to age, created a rift among the staff. Many felt that this choice was not only biased, but also detrimental to the company's once positive work environment. As the atmosphere grew increasingly strained, Carol and the site manager had to step in to keep the company afloat, operating largely behind the scenes. This shift in responsibilities burdened me significantly. Previously, administrative duties were distributed among Brenda, Carol, and myself. Now I found myself handling all such tasks alone, often working late into the night to keep up. Meanwhile, Anthony's commitment to his role was minimal at best. He spent much of his time engaging in leisure activities like visiting hostess bars, betting on horse races, and other forms of gambling. My interactions with him became particularly strained after I confronted him about misusing the company's credit card for personal entertainment and dining expenses, highlighting a serious misuse of company resources and further souring our working relationship. I had previously overlooked certain questionable expenses, but this particular incident was too egregious to ignore. With a sense of dread, I returned the receipt to him, firmly stating, "I can't approve this expense." His response was immediate and sharp. "Why not?" I explained, "This is for your wife's corrective underwear. It's not related to business, so it can't be expensed." The president's face turned red with anger as he retorted, "Don't challenge me. She's the president's wife. It's natural for her to dress well. This is a valid expense." I was baffled by his reasoning. The cost was $8,000, a sum not trivial by any measure. He then made a suggestion that left me even more astounded. "Then let's turn to selling corrective underwear into our new business venture. We'll categorize it as inventory so it counts as an expense." He seemed genuinely pleased with this idea, but I was speechless. "We're a paving company," I managed to say. Undeterred, he continued, "So what? We can threaten clients that if they don't buy from us, we'll cancel their contracts. Everyone will buy. It's easy money. $38,000 for a set." He laughed loudly at his suggestion, but I was horrified. "That's absolutely unacceptable," I countered sharply. "It will damage our credibility." From that moment, I became a target of the president's disdain. Day after day, I endured his constant belittling. The situation became so unbearable that I frequently contemplated quitting. However, my loyalty to the chairman, who had always supported me, and my concern for my colleagues, who would undoubtedly struggle without my presence, kept me from leaving. I was also acutely aware that I couldn't afford to lose my job suddenly. Resolving to endure, I decided to bide my time, waiting for the right moment to seek a new opportunity. Then, in an unexpected twist, I was fired. As I contemplated the sudden turn of events, I knew that resigning abruptly would create issues for our clients. With resolve, I approached the president. "I can't just leave without a proper notice and handover," I insisted, my voice steady. "Your daughter would struggle with the workload on her own, especially since today is the day we handle our supplier payments." The president's reaction was as fiery as I anticipated. His face turned beet red as he yelled, "Shut up! I told you to resign because my daughter is joining the company. Today is your last day. Let the payments wait until they come to collect. There's no need to pay them up front." Shocked by his response, I tried to reason with him. "Isn't it normal to pay for something once you buy it?" I explained patiently, as though speaking to a child. However, his next words were so irrational they left me speechless. "If that's the case, just threaten to switch suppliers. Tell them we won't make the payment this time, so they should give it to us for free." "That's not how business is done," I responded, astounded by his suggestion. "You're completely useless," he retorted. "My daughter has a college degree. She can handle the office work easily. As a family, she won't question my expenses like you do. You're all talk and no action. We don't need someone like you in our company. Leave now." It became painfully clear that he wanted his daughter to take over accounting to easily justify personal expenses as business expenditures. "Oh, is that so?" "Just remember, I won't regret this," I replied, though I knew further words were futile. With a heavy heart, I quickly gathered my belongings and left, feeling deep concern for our clients. I called Carol immediately, despite knowing she and Brenda were preoccupied with the chairman's health. This issue was urgent, and I trusted Carol to handle it. Once outside, I found myself unexpectedly idle, having been fired without notice, a clear violation of labor standards laws. If I reported this to the Labor Standards Office, the company would face serious repercussions. Since our company participated in the middle company payment system, designed to support small and medium-sized enterprises with severance payments, I could claim my severance pay and 1 month's salary without haste. There was no need to rush into another job. I left with my integrity intact, hoping that Carol could manage the situation I had left behind. Given that I could apply for my benefits within 5 years of my retirement date, and considering the Labor Standards Office had a 3-year statute of limitations, I meticulously planned out the steps and timeline necessary for my retirement. This allowed me the freedom to take a breather. I had been working tirelessly, with overtime and weekends, without a moment for myself. Eager to explore and relax, I decided to take a day trip to the beach for some much-needed respite. After a rejuvenating day at the beach, I returned to my locker to check my phone and found it flooded with missed calls, emails, and voicemails. Among these notifications, Carol's email stood out. She confirmed that the payment processes had been handled smoothly and everything was in order. This news brought a sense of relief, despite the abrupt and heated manner of my departure from the company. Next, I listened to a voicemail from the company where I could hear the president's voice filled with panic. "Hey, what's going on? They're saying I'm not the real president. Did you know about this? Explain yourself." I couldn't help but chuckle at his distress and his delayed grasp of reality. Continuing through my messages, another important one caught my attention, a message from the chairman himself. Feeling the urgency, I promptly made my way to the hospital that evening. Upon arriving, I found Brenda and the president already there in the chairman's room. The chairman, upon seeing me, expressed his apologies from his bed. "Donna, I'm truly sorry for my son's foolishness." Anthony, still bewildered and arrogant, blurted out, "Hey, what's going on?" "I'm not the official president. Explain yourself." His lack of understanding was apparent, but the chairman quickly put him in his place with a stern command to quiet down. It turned out that right after I had called Carol, she had informed both the chairman and Brenda of the situation. The chairman had then confronted Anthony, who had been masquerading as president, with a pointed question. Do you really not know anything? This revelation marked a critical turning point in addressing the chaotic situation left in the wake of my dismissal. As the president, Anthony, still visibly agitated and confused, continued to raise his voice, I calmly clarified the reality of his position. Anthony, you never actually had any legal authority. Your role as president was essentially nominal, I explained. It might seem confusing, but in business terms, president is a title that denotes a role within the company, not a legal standing. The representative director, on the other hand, is the one who holds legal responsibilities for the company's external actions. I continued, elucidating the distinction. The representative director role is a formal position requiring specific legal procedures for any changes. While the title of president can be assigned or changed relatively informally within the company, altering who is the representative director involves a more complex legal process. That's why the position you held didn't have the legal weight you assumed. 5 months ago, when Anthony was appointed president, there was significant opposition from Carol, the site manager, and veteran employees. That's when I suggested a strategy. Anthony would act as a figurehead president while the chairman would remain the legally responsible representative director. Understanding the complexities of our company's procedures and laws, I knew the implications well. The plan was simple. If Anthony demonstrated genuine dedication and won the support of all employees, we would then begin the legal process to formally establish his presidency. However, if he failed to prove himself capable of leadership, the contingency plan would involve either removing him or potentially shutting down the company while Carol and the site manager prepared to start a new venture. Despite doubts about Anthony's capacity for change from people like Carol, the chairman and Brenda continued to have faith in him until he unjustly dismissed me, which finally opened their eyes to his inability to lead. If you want to be a leader, you need to learn and take care of your employees, the chairman had repeatedly emphasized to Anthony. Anthony, in his typical dismissive tone, retorted, "It's not a big deal, right? Can't we just handle the procedures now?" "No, it's not that simple," the chairman patiently explained. "Our company offers stocks to employees who want them, and many have taken up that offer. Donna, for instance, owns 15% of the company, making her a major shareholder. We cannot simply disregard her views." This conversation highlighted the crucial misunderstandings and missteps in Anthony's approach to his role within the company, stressing the importance of both legal and ethical governance in business leadership. As the president began to grasp the seriousness of his position, his face turned pale. "What? I don't own any shares?" he stammered, disbelief washing over him. The chairman responded with a heavy heart, "I plan to pass on my shares to you once you proved yourself capable as a president." "I'm deeply disappointed. Were you only interested in my wealth, thinking I didn't have much time left?" His voice trailed off into despair, and he slumped back, overcome with emotion. Brenda remained silent beside him, visibly upset by the unfolding drama. Defiantly, the president shot back, "Well, I'm the eldest son. What's wrong with claiming what's rightfully mine? The company belongs to me." His words only deepened the chairman's disappointment. "I can't forgive this anymore," the chairman declared, his voice firm. "As the representative director and a shareholder of this company, I bear full responsibility, and I have the right to call for a shareholders' meeting and propose your removal," I interjected decisively. The president's complexion turned ashen as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You mean I could be fired?" Brenda interjected. "You were just a clerk, Anthony. Donna is the only one who spoke up to give you a chance." Turning to me, Brenda apologized sincerely. "Donna, I owe you an apology. I regret the trouble caused because of my love for my son. Please tell me what you'd like to do." Confronting the president directly, I stated, "Mr. President, I no longer wish to work under your leadership, so I am resigning immediately. However, I expect to receive my severance pay along with 1 month's salary, including unpaid overtime and holiday pay. As a shareholder, I will also take action through the Labor Standards Office to remove anyone who is detrimental to the company." As I spoke, the president's face shifted from pale to ghostly white. Continuing, I informed them, "Carol has been actively visiting clients and promoting our new company. Many clients have already decided to switch from our current company to the new one, and most of our employees are planning to follow suit." "That's impossible! I'll sue you!" the president blurted out, his voice cracking under the strain. His threats, however, did little to deter the decisive course of action already in motion, setting the stage for a significant shift in the company's future. As the situation reached a climax, the chairman asserted his authority decisively. "I am the representative director, and you have no such authority," he stated firmly. The president crumpled to his knees, a picture of defeat. Witnessing this, I was flooded with mixed emotions: regret, disappointment, but also a sense of closure. "Mr. President, it's unfortunate it had to end this way," I said, addressing him with a somber tone. "Had you changed your approach upon your return, things might have been different. There were ample opportunities for understanding if you had made efforts to learn and adapt. Sadly, it was the president himself who squandered those chances, a classic case of reaping what one sows." In the aftermath, the chairman made the difficult decision to shut down the company, leaving Anthony unemployed. The president's wife tried to venture into selling corrective underwear, but the endeavor failed. They faced legal challenges due to their aggressive sales tactics and were eventually arrested for their involvement in a pyramid scheme. When Carol returned to her parents' home, she discovered boxes of unsold underwear left behind, a testament to the failed venture. As for their daughter, she found employment elsewhere, though the details of her job remain unknown. I now work happily at the new company founded by Carol and the site manager. In this new role, I cherish my relationships with my colleagues and strive to live authentically each day, appreciating the professional and personal integrity we uphold in our work environment. This experience has taught me the importance of ethical leadership and the value of a supportive workplace community. Growing up, I never envisioned the twists and turns my life would take. My name is Julie, and this is my journey. Born to hardworking farmers, I learned the value of diligence early on. My childhood was a blend of school days followed by afternoons spent helping on the farm. Weekends were reserved for family gatherings and chores, simple yet profoundly fulfilling times. Graduating from high school marked a significant shift in my life's trajectory. My parents, always envisioning a brighter future for me, encouraged me to pursue higher education. "Julie," my father said one evening at dinner, "your mother and I believe you should experience more than farm life. Consider college." Their words opened a new chapter for me, leading me to a bustling city that felt like a different universe compared to the quiet rhythm of rural life. College was not just about academics. It introduced me to diverse individuals with bold ambitions and stories. It was there I met Terry, a charismatic guy who saw life as a grand adventure. Unlike the farm boys I knew, Terry dreamed of a life free from the drudgery of hard work, a life filled with enjoyment and leisure. I was enchanted. Terry's perspective on life was invigorating, and soon we were inseparable. Our relationship progressed quickly, and discussions of marriage began. When I shared the news with my parents, they were hesitant, yet supportive. They insisted on meeting Terry, wanting to understand the man who had captured my heart. Although my father expressed some reservations, I dismissed them, blinded by love and the excitement of a new life. Thanks to my parents' generosity, Terry and I had a beautiful wedding, and they even helped us settle into an apartment in the city. "We want you to start on solid ground," my mother said, her eyes teary as I hugged them, promising to make them proud. The initial years of marriage seemed perfect. Terry and I established our lives in the city, embracing the routine we had built together. However, as time passed, subtle signs of discord emerged. Terry often complained about visits to my parents' farm, disliking the chores and the rural smells. I overlooked these comments, attributing them to his urban upbringing. 3 years into our marriage, I became pregnant. While I was thrilled, Terry's lukewarm reaction hinted at underlying reservations. I hoped it was merely an initial shock and that he would grow into the idea of fatherhood. My parents, ever supportive, showered us with more help, from a new car to vacations. As I reflect on those days, I recognize the signs I had missed, signs that perhaps should have alerted me to deeper issues in our seemingly perfect life. The journey I embarked upon, influenced by the dreams and hopes of my parents and intertwined with Terry's different worldview, taught me about life's unpredictable nature and the complex tapestry of relationships. Terry took our parents' help for granted, often commenting dismissively, "That's what parents are for." When our son Russell was born, I was absolutely enchanted by him. Terry tried his best, but adapting to fatherhood seemed a struggle for him. He would often get frustrated during Russell's nighttime cries, saying, "Can't you keep him quiet?" Some of us have to work in the morning. I tried to keep the peace, reminding myself that both of us were still adjusting to being parents. Our visits to the farm became less frequent and more strained as Terry's reluctance grew. He would complain bitterly whenever my dad asked for his help with the farm chores, especially if it involved fixing the tractor. "I'm not a mechanic, for Christ's sake," he would protest. Yet my dad remained patient, guiding him through each step, while Terry clumsily handled the tools, clearly out of his element. Then, within a year, tragedy struck. Both of my parents passed away suddenly. Devastated, I found little comfort in Terry's awkward attempts to console me. "It'll be okay," he'd say, patting my back. His next words, however, stunned me. At least they left us the farm. It was clear his mind was on the inheritance rather than our loss. In the wake of my grief, Terry suggested we sell the farm. "We could buy a big house in the city and live like kings," he proposed one evening over dinner. I was too worn down by grief and the demands of motherhood to argue. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking perhaps it was best to support my husband. With a few signatures, my family's legacy was sold off to the highest bidder. The sale proceeds went into our joint account and Terry was ecstatic. "We're set for life, Julie," he exclaimed, thrilled at the prospect of no longer needing to work hard. We reduced our work hours, and initially it felt like we were living a dream. However, as time passed, I noticed Terry's diminishing motivation. He began quitting jobs frequently, always blaming his bosses or the job demands. "I'm not a slave," he'd argue whenever I expressed concern about our finances. "Relax, Julie. We're set for life. Why work ourselves to death?" Meanwhile, Russell grew up, graduated from high school and college, and started his own life, making me both proud and a bit lonely without him around. One day, while reading the newspaper, I spotted an article about a successful concrete production plant owned by Terry's Uncle Willie. Excited, I called out to Terry, "Did you see this article about your Uncle Willie?" His reaction was harsh and immediate. "I don't want to hear about that old tyrant," he snapped. I knew the story, or at least Terry's version of it, about how his parents had died, leaving him with mixed feelings about his extended family. As I looked at Terry, I realized how much of our lives had been shaped by his outlook and how much I had conceded to his desires over the years. It made me ponder the true cost of the choices we had made together. Terry was just a boy when he lost his parents, and his Uncle Willie took him in. Over the years, Terry had painted a picture of Willie as a domineering and unyielding man who tried to steer Terry into the family business without regard for his nephew's desires. "He never listened to what I wanted," Terry had confided in me long ago. "It was always about what he thought was best, so I left to start my own life." Now, seeing Terry in his robe well into the afternoon, a part of me wondered if there was more to his story than he let on. One day, as I watched him recline casually, I suggested, "Maybe it's time to make peace, Terry." "It's been years. People change." His response was immediate and fierce. "Make peace with that control freak? No way in hell, Julie. Just drop it." I let the topic go, But Terry's intense reaction troubled me. It revealed a deep well of anger and resentment, and it made me question what other burdens he might be carrying and what other parts of his story were yet unseen. One quiet Sunday, I overheard Terry on the phone speaking tersely. "I am not interested in his life, and it does not concern me," he snapped before hanging up. Curious, I asked, "Who is that, honey?" His expression blank, he replied, "Hospital. My uncle's sick. If he kicks the bucket, at least I'll finally get something out of him." I was shocked by his callousness. "Terry, that's a terrible thing to say. He raised you." "Yeah, and made my life hell," he retorted, settling back with the TV remote. Watching him, something inside me snapped. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the person I thought I knew. Without saying a word, I went to our room and called our son Russell. "Hey, sweetie," I greeted him. "How would you feel about meeting your great uncle?" Russell was taken aback but agreed. An hour later, we were at the hospital, my heart pounding as we entered the intensive care unit. The room was filled with the quiet beeps of machines and soft voices. There, looking small and frail in his hospital bed surrounded by monitors, was Uncle Willie. He was nothing like the tyrannical figure Terry had described. When we introduced ourselves, his eyes welled up with tears. "Julie, Russell," he said, his voice weak but filled with warmth. "Oh, I've wanted to meet you for so long." During our visit, Willie shared his version of the past. He spoke of how he had taken in Terry after his parents' death and raised him as his own. "I love that boy," Willie said, his voice cracking. "I wanted him to have everything, to continue the family business, to have a good life. But Terry had other plans. He said he didn't want the responsibility," Willie continued. "He didn't want to work hard like I did, staying up nights worrying about the business." My heart sank as I listened. Willie's portrayal was uncomfortably familiar. "Terry demanded I sell the business," Willie added, shaking his head. "He wanted me to set him up with a monthly allowance, an apartment, a car. Said I owed him a carefree life." As I absorbed Willie's words, I realized how much of Terry's character remained hidden from me, shaded by his narratives and resentments. Seeing the shock on Russell's face, I realized he was as stunned as I was by Uncle Willie's revelations. "That's not how life works," Willie continued, his voice filled with disappointment. He explained how he had pleaded with Terry to stay and learn the business, but Terry had refused, arrogantly claiming he would marry rich and never need to work a day in his life. As I sat in the hospital room listening to Willie, memories from the past decade began to resurface, assembling like puzzle pieces into a clearer picture. Terry had always chosen part-time jobs, frequently called in sick, and took excessive days off. I had excused his behavior as stress or him being a free spirit, but the painful truth was now glaringly obvious. Terry had often said, "Life is for pleasure, Julie. Why should we kill ourselves working?" I felt a wave of nausea as I realized he hadn't married me out of love, but for the financial security he thought my family could provide. I was merely the wealthy bride he had boasted to his uncle he would secure. Tears welled up in my eyes as I grappled with the profound deceit at the foundation of our life together. Our marriage, our family, everything was built on a lie. Uncle Willie, sensing my distress, apologized. "I'm so sorry," his voice frail. "I wanted to leave something for you and Russell, but I can't." "It's okay," I reassured him, squeezing his hand gently. Willie grew more agitated as he spoke of his unfinished plans and a project that could have been transformative had he more time. Suddenly he grimaced in pain, and the machines around him beeped alarmingly. A nurse rushed in, urging us to leave. A few days later, Uncle Willie passed away. When I informed Terry, his reaction chilled me to the core. "Finally," he exclaimed with a grin, "took the old bastard long enough." I stared at him in disgust. "Terry, he was your uncle. He raised you." Terry dismissed it flippantly. "Yeah, so? When's the funeral? Do we have to go to that?" In the end, Terry didn't attend the funeral. Russell and I organized a small, dignified service, one I hoped would have made Uncle Willie proud. Meanwhile, Terry stayed home, eagerly talking about the inheritance. "The factory's gotta be worth at least $20 million, he boasted on the phone. "Can you believe it? I'm rich." Watching him celebrate, I felt nothing but revulsion. Then, things deteriorated further. One evening, Terry coldly remarked, "You know, Julie, you're getting kind of old for me. I think I'm ready for an upgrade." His words were like a slap. I stood there, stunned. "Excuse me?" I managed to say. He shrugged, unashamed. "You heard me." His blunt cruelty was the last straw, revealing the full extent of the stranger he had become, or perhaps had always been. The man I had married, the partner I thought I knew, was just a facade. Now, faced with the harsh reality, I had to decide what to do next in this unexpected chapter of my life. As the weeks passed, Terry's behavior grew increasingly troubling. He would return home in the early hours, reeking of alcohol and perfume, often with lipstick stains on his collar. Each time I confronted him, he'd dismiss me harshly. "Mind your own business," he'd snap. "You should be grateful I come home at all." Lying awake at night, listening to the sound of Terry stumbling in, I realized I couldn't continue living this way. I deserved better, but I also needed to uncover the truth about Terry, about our finances, and about the life we thought we had built together. One morning, after another night of Terry returning at dawn, I confronted him. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and pain. He glared at me, his bloodshot eyes narrowing. "None of your damn business, Julie. You should be grateful I come back at all." His words felt like a slap. "Grateful? Is that what you think our marriage is?" I asked, stunned by his callousness. He ignored my question, instead eyeing me calculatingly. "Say, how much is left from your parents' inheritance? We must have some savings, right?" His abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. "Terry, we've spent it all. The accounts are empty," I replied, my voice faltering. His face contorted into an ugly sneer. "Empty? You've got to be kidding me." He paced the room, muttering to himself, then turned back to me, his expression cold. "Well, I guess that's it then. I'm done here. Done with you." Before I could respond, the front door opened and Russell walked in, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Terry's demeanor shifted instantly. He plastered on a fake smile and approached our son. "Russell, my boy, just the person I wanted to see. I need you to sign something for me," he said, pulling out a document. "It's just a formality. You're renouncing any claim to Uncle Willie's estate. Since there's no will, it all comes to me anyway." Russell looked at me, confusion in his eyes, but after my nod, he signed the document without hesitation. Terry's grin was triumphant as he snatched back the document. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, he turned back to me, all pretense gone. "I want a divorce," he announced, his voice cold and flat. "I never loved you, Julie. I just tolerated you for your parents' money. But now I'm rich. I don't need you anymore." His words struck me like physical blows. "I'm moving to Uncle Willie's house," Terry continued, already pulling out a suitcase. "Don't try to contact me. It's over." And just like that, he was gone. 25 years of marriage packed away in a suitcase and walked out the door. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. It felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "Mom?" Russell's voice was soft, filled with concern. "Are you okay?" I turned to my son, my rock, and as he wrapped his arms around me, the dam broke. Tears streamed down my face as he held me tight. "It's okay, Mom," he murmured. "We'll get through this. You're strong. You'll be okay." As I clung to my son, sobbing into his shoulder, a small part of me marveled at the man he had become, kind, compassionate, everything his father wasn't. As I whispered to Russell, "You're the best thing he ever did," I realized he was the only good thing to come out of my marriage. Russell held me tighter, and in that embrace I felt reassured that no matter what the future held, I wasn't alone. I had my son, and together we would face whatever challenges came our way. The weeks following Terry's departure were tough and filled with pain and disbelief. I tried to stay strong and focus on moving forward, but it was hard, especially as Terry seemed intent on flaunting his new life. His Facebook timeline was suddenly filled with images of Uncle Willie's mansion, his new residence. I tried to ignore it, to concentrate on my healing, but then the photos took a new turn. A young blonde woman began appearing beside him, barely older than Russell. In one particularly jarring post, Terry had his arm around her, both grinning at the camera, with the caption, "Meet my fiancée, Denise. Upgrade complete." The calls started almost immediately. Friends, acquaintances, and even Russell's old school teachers were all asking questions I couldn't, or didn't want to, answer. "Julie, dear, is everything okay? We saw Terry's posts. What's going on? Are you and Terry really?" Overwhelmed by the humiliation and constant reminders of Terry's betrayal, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Terry and asked to meet, after first consulting with a lawyer. On the day of our meeting, I arrived at our old favorite cafe, divorce papers in hand. Terry swaggered in with Denise on his arm. She couldn't have been more than 22, her face caked with makeup, giggling at something Terry had whispered. "Well, well," Terry sneered, pulling out a chair for Denise, "if it isn't the old ball and chain. Denise, honey, meet Julie, the starter wife." Denise's pitying glance was infuriating, but I maintained my composure. "I have the divorce papers here," I said, sliding them across the table. "I'm not asking for much, just the house. You can keep everything else." To my surprise, Terry picked up the pen without argument. "Fine, have your little house. I've got bigger and better things now," he declared, hastily scrawling his signature. He then turned to Denise, his voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Now I can finally be with someone I truly love, someone worthy of me." I collected the papers, my hands shaking slightly. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Terry's mocking laughter, but I didn't look back. I had what I came for. The next day, I filed the divorce papers. Handing them over to the court clerk, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Life has a way of delivering justice in unexpected forms. For me, it came through a headline splashed across the local newspaper. "Local business tycoon's empire crumbles. Nephew left with massive debt." It turned out Uncle Willie had taken out a huge loan just before his death, hoping to expand the business. He had mentioned a new project during our hospital visit, but Russell and I hadn't grasped the full implications at the time. Now, the reality of it all was starkly clear. I watched from a distance as Terry's new life unraveled. He sold the factory, the mansion, the cars, everything. Yet he was still left with nearly $1 million in debt. The icing on the cake? His young bride, Denise, packed her bags and left the moment she realized Terry was far from the wealthy man she had thought he was. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a twinge of satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Terry. Then, on a rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. Opening it, I found Terry standing there, a shadow of the smug, wealthy man who had left me months earlier. He was disheveled, his eyes red and desperate. "Julie," he said, his voice cracking, "I've been such a fool. I see that now. Please, can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. For the next hour, I listened as Terry poured out his regrets. He told me how he had lost everything and realized what truly mattered. "I was wrong, Julie," he confessed, his eyes pleading. "So wrong. But I see now that you were the only one who ever truly cared for me, the only one I've ever really loved." Then, to my utter disbelief, Terry got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. "Julie, please give me another chance. Marry me again. Together we can overcome anything." For a moment, I was speechless. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I laughed. It started as a small chuckle and grew into full-blown, tears streaming down my face laughter. Terry's face fell. "What's so funny?" he demanded. When I finally caught my breath, I looked him straight in the eye. "Oh, Terry, Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could treat me like garbage, throw me away, and then come crawling back when things got tough?" His expression darkened. "Now listen here," he snarled, jumping to his feet. "This is my house too. I have rights." I calmly walked to the drawer where I kept our divorce papers, pulling them out and showing him his signature. "No, Terry, you don't. You signed away any claim to this house. It's mine now. Get out, or I'll call the cops." For a moment I thought he might try to argue further, but the realization that he had no legal standing seemed to sink in. Terry stared at the divorce papers, then at me, and finally, with a scowl, he turned and left, closing the door behind him. As I watched him disappear into the rainy night, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life that included Terry was finally, decisively closed. Now it was time to move forward, with my son by my side and a future to rebuild. Something in my expression must have conveyed my resolve clearly because, without another word, Terry turned and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him. Once he was gone, I immediately called Russell to tell him everything. My son was supportive as always. "You did the right thing, Mom," he assured me. "I'm proud of you." His words bolstered my spirits more than he could possibly know. In the weeks that followed, I faced some significant decisions. The house, filled with a mix of cherished and painful memories, suddenly seemed too large for just me. So I chose to sell it, using the proceeds to purchase a cozy apartment in a lively neighborhood I had always admired. At 55, I found myself embarking on a new chapter in life, one that was truly my own. I began traveling to places Terry and I had once talked about visiting, but never did. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to try, joined a local book club, and even started salsa dancing. These new activities brought fresh joy and vibrancy to my days. Every now and then, I'd catch a glimpse of Terry around town. Time hadn't been kind to him. He looked older, clearly worn down by his mistakes and the rough turns his life had taken. Observing him, I felt a sense of closure and relief that my own life had taken a different path. Life hadn't unfolded as I'd once imagined, but looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, for the first time in many years, I felt truly, completely, happily myself. I embraced each new day with enthusiasm, grateful for the freedom to live life on my terms and the peace that came with knowing I had made the right decisions for myself.